there, Sammy? All right. Perfect. Okay. Well, thank you everyone for joining today. And this is just an exciting talk for us. We did plan it definitely strategically the day after the tariff announcements. We didn't have any idea what they would look like, and everyone was given their questions long before they knew what was going to be said last night. And I know that we've had, and I don't even know if it happened at 11:30 that the Canada was going to be responding. Did that actually end up happening, or is it not yet? No. Yeah. So anyways, and so that may actually be happening now. Maybe people will be watching both on both screens. I feel like I've spent a lot of meetings lately watching other, like, waiting for people to fill in newsrooms and come on to talk about all these things. It's been a roller coaster. Holy moly. I'm the executive director here at the Organic Council of Ontario. But I'm also a small business owner that exports and imports as well. And so, like, feeling it from, the membership side and everything they're dealing with, but also on that personal side of having to navigate what that potentially was going to look like in terms of my company as well. And yeah, so it's anybody who's got a vested interest in this, it's been very emotionally a roller coaster. We have no idea what's going to happen each time, and I definitely don't feel like we're off the roller coaster yet. I think it's gonna keep going on. So we have brought on 4 panel members today that represent all sorts of industry people here. So we've got Mo Romero. Let me know if I say your names wrong at all. Laura Telford, Tia Loftsgard, and Rob Wallbridge. And I actually have some bios and was going to introduce them, but I think it's much better if you introduce yourself and tell us, what it is you do, and why tariffs would even be important to you. So let's get started. I don't have Laura on screen here, but I've got Tia first. So I'll try to jump around between panel members here in terms of who I can see here, and try to start off with different people. I have a number of questions. But Tia, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. Sounds good. Hi, everybody. I'm Tia Loftsgard. I'm located here in Ottawa. I'm the executive director at the Canada Organic Trade Association. And why do tariffs matter? We are a trade association. It is a huge part of what we're focused on. I always say that our mission is to promote and to protect. And at this moment, we are here trying to protect organic in a big way, but also promote organic possibly to other markets to avoid this risk of the tariffs. So it's been a lot trying to monitor this, and we're happy to share what we know here today.
All right. Thanks so much. Mo, do you want to be our next?
Sure. My name is Mo Romero. Mo's not short for anything, just Mo. And I work at Riverside Natural Foods located in Toronto, Ontario. I've been with the company for about a year and a half. I look after sourcing and procurement. I'm very fortunate to work with a company that cares deeply about organic food. It's created a more genuine interest in organic food myself. So ever since joined the company, I eat a ton of organic food, vegetables, fruit, meat as well. In terms of how tariffs have impacted us, it's impacted us to some degree. We're very fortunate that we've geodiversified the sourcing of our organic product. There's some product that we source from the United States or is processed in the United States, so we do have some impacts, and we're trying to deal with it through a few different ways. But yeah, it's impacted us to some degree.
All right. Thanks so much, Mo. Laura, take it away.
Hi, everyone. I am Laura Telford. I'm the organic specialist for the government of Manitoba, so Manitoba Agriculture. And I would say the biggest thing that is affecting my job and the prairie growers is probably not on your radar screen. It's everything that's happening with China. So we have 100% tariff on peas, and that includes organic peas. So that is pretty much shutting down that industry. It leaves one processor left in Canada that buys peas, and 60% of the rest goes to China. So we are really, really impacted by that.
All right. Okay. Thanks for sharing that. And Rob.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Rob Wallbridge. I work with SureSource Commodities. We are headquartered in Petrolia, Ontario, but we have staff working across North America, essentially. 100% of our business is in organic grains, and probably 90% plus of that crosses the border back and forth to the US. And we also deal with some international imports as well. So yeah, tariffs are a huge part of what we have to deal with.
Yeah. All right. Okay. I'm going to start with you, Mo, and I'm going to kind of launch this. We have like a number of questions, but to cover today, I think the title of our talk is The Hidden Costs of Tariffs. And I think that's because sometimes there's these costs that are the obvious ones, if it's 25%, you have to pay that. If things are crossing the border, maybe multiple times, it has to be paid. And we had no idea what was going to come out of yesterday. So taking into account now the announcements from yesterday and then also maybe what you've seen over the last few months, are you guys finding that there's a hidden cost to tariffs to you or the organic sector in general?
Yeah, so in terms of the hidden costs, the not so obvious costs. So I would say for Riverside Natural Foods, and I forgot to mention that our main brand is MadeGood, so you've probably seen that in the shelves throughout Canada, United States, and elsewhere. But I think the biggest hidden cost, yeah, there's a couple. So one is once we became aware of the looming threat of tariffs when things changed in the United States in November. My team got started on trying to work with different suppliers that we ordinarily wouldn't work with, or different processors or different farmers. So we found that there was a lot of time, our time being spent on trying to find different sources. When we can't find product that's produced or processed in the United States, it's a lot more expensive to source something that's further out around the globe. So for example, we might be getting certain sugars from the United States, but if we went directly to a processor in Brazil, let's say, it's a lot more expensive. So there's that aspect. So I would say it's trying to source product from farther away. Then there's also the transportation costs and the lead times. So there's an increased holding cost for us to sit on more inventory than we'd want to. There's a risk of spoilage if we're sitting on inventory for too long. So there's a waste cost as well, or the risk of waste. We're tying up a lot of our working capital in this inventory more than we want to. So there's the carrying cost as well that we'd have to potentially suffer from. So I would say those are some of the hidden costs that are maybe not, sort of sitting on the surface, but that's what I experienced, at least in the last 4 to 6 months, is sort of exploring our options and seeing like, hey, these are the additional costs that we're potentially subject to.
All right. Well, thanks. And holy smokes, I had no idea about all of those pieces. So there's a lot going on there. Rob, do you want to tell us about your experience here?
Yeah, I'd echo a lot of what Mo has said in terms of the additional costs that they're experiencing. We're seeing the same type of thing. We've had customers in the US, go out and invest in additional storage in order to bring in as much product as they could ahead of tariffs. And so, obviously that's a additional cost either to rent or buy that storage, and then they've got the carrying cost of that extra inventory, the risk associated with holding it until they're going to use it. There are other costs, transportation as well. If we're, again, if we're pushing to move things across the border as quickly as possible, the transportation companies understand that. I mean, they're, they're seeing an increased demand, so they're going to raise their costs, or we may end up having to go with a higher cost carrier in order to meet the required time frame. A lot of it for us, is really dealing with the uncertainty is a huge cost. It's hard to put a dollar figure on it, but when you're just constantly, ping-ponging back and forth, is there going to be a tariff, tomorrow? Is it going to be off again in 2 days? Is it going to be 10%? Is it going to be 25%? There's a lot of stress dealing with that uncertainty, and then you've got to also try to maintain the relationships with your customers as well. And so we're on the phones, working, emails back and forth, just trying to keep our customers up to date with what we know, and trying to figure out how we're going to, maintain the supply chains over the long term.
All right. Yeah, there's a lot going on there. Tia, do you want to share with us? You're dealing with kind of all sorts of things over at CODA there. Oh, you're on mute. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, we've been surveying and talking to companies and farmers and really trying to get a sense of what is the actual cost, what is to really kind of understand how Canada should position ourselves in regards to these tariffs that the US has put on us. One thing that I would mention is that the US is #1 organic market in the world, right? You cannot replace that. And we've had meetings with the Minister of Agriculture and just said, however much you're going to help us with diversifying to finding markets, it's never going to be quick enough. And there's never going to be enough demand. Like, you cannot replace the US market. So it's very tricky. And I do want to talk about how if farmers lose their market or manufacturers lose their market, they will either shift their production to the United States, or they may even close down. And we have heard of both examples. And this is impacting then Canada's GDP. If we're losing farms being certified, it would take 3 years to come back in if this is removed and we get the US market back. So that's a huge hidden cost of 3 years of coming out of organic production. I do want to talk about the real costs as well. Can I go to the non-hidden? We've been monitoring and trying to really figure out what is the cost of tariffs and what's going to be coming our way. And I did get some data out of the Organic Trade Association. They've been working with the USDA on the NOP import certificate data. So finally, we have a new source of data. And out of that data that they've given me, it's kind of subdivided into about 12 product categories, with about half of it being miscellaneous. Right now, our government tracks about 29% of the volume going to the United States. What I got from them was $1.8 billion worth, right? So our Canadian government has no insights in regards to the amount of trade happening with organic to the United States. I did a little synopsis out of the product categories that I could break down on which products would be CUSMA compliant and exempt from the tariffs. And only about, I think it was 45%. Let me just pull up my spreadsheet here. Only about 45% would likely not be CUSMA compliant. And if you add 25% onto the dollar figures that I've got, this is back of the napkin, it would be about $16 million in tariffs that the US has been collecting off of non-CUSMA compliant products. So that's a lot. And then on our reciprocal tariffs, we've done a whole assessment with the data that we do have available. And again, we've got firm data in regards to 20 products. There's 65 products that have reciprocal tariffs coming in from the United States. And that would amount to about 4.3 million in reciprocal tariffs for Canadians coming on US products. So there is a lot of money involved in these tariffs, and it's very tricky to imagine a remission process or a short-term loan helping these businesses. I'm seriously hearing of businesses folding, so tricky.
Yeah. And for someone like me, like doesn't really know what CUSMA compliance looks like, what what's that differentiating factor between a business that is CUSMA compliant and isn't CUSMA compliant?
Sure. CUSMA compliance means that your product, there's something called rule of origin. So if your product is made in Canada, US, or Mexico, one of the 3 trade partners, then you are considered CUSMA compliant. There are multi-ingredient products where it might have a percentage that you could have non-CUSMA, but it's different in each product category for agriculture. But I've heard everything from you need to have like 60 to 70% CUSMA ingredients. So I mean, anything that that I kind of looked at on this list is obviously, there's not a lot of chocolate that's made here because it's grown in Dominican, or sugar containing products. I think there's a lot of products that are in the processed category that would be subject to the tariffs. Yeah.
And Mo, you guys, because you've also got multiple ingredients in your products, are you CUSMA compliant then with all of your products, or is that a difference in different products that you have?
It depends on the product. So most of ours are CUSMA compliant, but others are not. We're struggling, and also like what the tariffs apply to change. So before we thought, hey, this set of ingredients are not subject to the tariffs, and then we find out, hey, there's another phase where it is. So we're still trying to navigate through that.
Oh yeah, that's really difficult. All right, Laura, can you speak to this?
Sure. I just want to add that most of my expertise is related to organic field crops. And just to add on to the discussion about CUSMA compliance, the biggest thing, and maybe Rob can jump in if I'm wrong about this, the biggest non-compliant raw agricultural product that I can see right now is probably organic soybeans from Ontario and Quebec. So right now, the 3 or 4 major organic soybean processors, which are located in those 2 provinces, are primarily bringing in organic soybeans from Togo and Benin and Nigeria. And so if those are not considered CUSMA compliant, then that is a huge wonking tariff that we're talking about there. So Canada does not track the value of that, but the US has estimated what the value is. And right now, our exports on raw organic soybeans, which would be CUSMA compliant, are around 40 million a year. In 2024, but we think that the value of the processed soybean meal is at least double that. So if that's not CUSMA compliant, that will seriously shut down that industry. And maybe I'll let Rob comment on that because he's more in that business. But I just wanted to add one other comment on these kind of hidden tariffs that nobody else has mentioned, and that's the cost of currency. So traders in the US are going to go to the lowest cost import country. And a lot of that is related to the relative value of the US dollar to that local currency. And so what you want, ironically, is a low currency, which is Canada has had relative to the US for the last 2 years. And lately we've noticed, and I'm focusing on Ontario products here because you have a largely Ontario audience. So organic corn and soybean are starting to become more attractive in terms of pricing to our local growers because the currency dropped as a result of tariffs. And now yesterday, after Trump's announcement, because the tariffs actually looked kind of good for Canada relative to everyone else and kind of bad to Wall Street, the US dollar actually went down a tick and the Canadian dollar went up a tick. So that's bad for soybean and corn producers. So this stuff is complicated.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Okay, so I'm going to actually talk about like what we thought was going to happen yesterday, potentially with the tariffs, and what actually happened. And does that change like any of your thoughts or outlook in terms of the organic market and what we do see happening, at least in the short while? We know this could change next week. You know, it's never set in stone, but does it change sort of your thoughts on it, how people are responding to, you know, are they going to stay open? Are they going to change the way they're doing business? I'll start with you for this one, Tia.
I was going to say what we wanted to hear or what we heard yesterday, you know, because what we wanted to hear was that they were going to drop all the 25% tariffs. It's it's an interesting one. I think just the uncertainty is making everybody pause on business, right? Nobody's doing their new product launches. Nobody's doing these new sustainability initiatives. Everybody's in pause mode until they can figure out exactly the ramifications. Even when Riverside said, we don't even know which tariffs are on which products yet. Everything is still pretty fresh. Some companies were in the process already of perhaps, you know, moving to the US. They might be speeding that up. I've heard of a few more Delaware incorporations happening in the last little while. So I think that we're going to see a variety of responses by businesses, and ultimately companies will do what is best for them. Yeah.
Rob.
Yeah, I guess a couple different points. One, to echo what Laura said, I mean, yeah, we're definitely looking at, you know, in the case of soybean meal, African origin soybean meal going into the US, that's going to be, you know, 10% more expensive moving forward. You know, and then India was slapped with 26%, I believe. So
No,
again, that's
53.
increasing.
53 on India.
53, yeah. So I mean, it's going to, yeah. So I mean, it's going to have an impact. I get, you know, we were kind of pleasantly surprised that, you know, that we're kind of status quo here in Canada for the moment. I mean that, you know, uh, I guess, you know, the 10% tariffs on the African imports will kind of level the playing field a little bit for us. But there's still a huge degree of uncertainty going forward, and we're seeing that, you know, I'm getting calls from farmers every day asking for, you know, what new crop prices are going to be like. You know, do we have contracts available for new crop? And the answer is no, not yet, because, you know, the end users are hesitant to make any commitment when they don't know what the, you know, what the future is going to hold. So again, it just comes back to that uncertainty that really, you know, interferes with the ability for businesses to plan ahead and make commitments. So and then that trickles right back down to the farm level.
Yeah. And how about you, Laura?
I spent this morning looking at it, and by the time I had kind of done an analysis on our competitors, I felt kind of happy about this whole tariff thing. So there is a serious green light here for Canadian exporters, and that has to do with the relative price of grains going into the US from our key competitors. So our key competitors in the grains world are Romania, which is part of the EU, so 20% on them. India, which is 53%. Argentina and Turkey, 10%. So what's going to matter is the landed cost of organic products in the US. So if you add between 10 and 53%, that starts to make Canada, which is going to have free raw or organic commodities going into the US through CUSMA, look pretty good. So when I was at Guelph, I told organic corn producers in Ontario to not seed organic corn. Now I'm telling them seed organic corn because things have completely changed. Well, not completely. I mean, it's still not the best because the US has too many corn stalks. But for most grains, it's looking good, I would say, for us.
All right. How about you, Mo?
What more can I add? That was really great. I would say as a CPG manufacturer, what was announced yesterday, I think it's too early to say what the genuine impact will be because, like I said earlier, for us at least, we don't source a ton of material from the United States. I think where my heart burns a little bit is we make a lot of we've worked really hard in the past 7, 8 years to saturate the United States market with our brand. Um, Something big what we're trying to do is we're trying to make organic food, nutritional food accessible to as many people as possible. Um, we worked hard to try to get organic food into the conventional aisle to give, parents a good, healthy alternative to conventional products. So I think my biggest concern with the tariffs being imposed on our finished goods coming to the United States is that it might create pause with consumers on reaching out to our product, which could potentially be out of reach. We've taken measures to try to not make a price impact to our customers in the United States, but just psychologically, a lot of American consumers that buy our goods may want to rethink about their purchases at the grocery store to say, hey, my cost of living has increased with other commodities, gas and all that stuff. So the cost of renovating my home is going to be more expensive with Canadian lumber being tariffed as well. So I have to rethink my purchases going forward. So that's where my head was going at when the tariffs were announced. That will consumers in the United States have still desire organic food, especially coming from Canada.
Yeah. All right. And that's like not something that you would think about, but I guess overall spending habits will change here and there in response to the tariffs and around the world at this point, right? It's a huge impact. All right. So let's lighten it up a little bit maybe and talk about, and I think Laura already kind of alluded to this, but those advantages to tariffs. Are there some advantages to it? What do you see those being? I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start with Mo. I'll just have you start this one again. Yeah.
Sure. I would say that the biggest advantages, for example, like Laura mentioned, grains. So we source a ton of grains from Canada. We've thought of sourcing grains from other parts of the world because of um, um, uh, grains were negatively impacted, especially in Saskatchewan a couple of years with drought conditions. So that really forced us to say like, hey, maybe let's look at other parts of the world that grow grains like Finland, Sweden, Australia, even Russia at the time. We were looking a couple of years back, and United States. And so I'm very proud to source materials from Canada. I think this forces our hand to continue on that route and buy Canadian. And so I would say that's a positive spin on tariffs is that it makes us look at like, hey, what do we grow here? What could we potentially grow here in the future? Yeah, I would say that's sort of a positive advantage of tariffs for us. Yeah.
Buy Canada, buy local worked out for
Yeah.
you doing that before it was the thing.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, Laura, he was talking about grains and such. I'll take it down to you there. You might have, I know you already added some advantages, but maybe there's some other ones as well.
Yeah, so I think the local thing is a pretty big one. So a couple of weeks ago, I had a conversation with a major distributor who puts most of the organic packaged products into retail. And they told me that the major retailers were undergoing a store audit to displace any products that were not Canadian, especially US products. And they had come up with a list and they had instructed this distributor to do some work to source them from Canada. So I thought that was a really happy story for Canadians. And, I happened to point out to this guy because millet was on his list, that we do have a lot of organic millet from the Canadian prairie.
Yeah, awesome. All right. And Rob.
Yeah, I don't really have a lot more to add. I think it has really, I think, highlighted the opportunity for Canadian product and kind of increased consumer awareness and desire for that. And yeah, like Laura mentioned, we may enjoy some competitive advantage on the grain side right now, with if given the status quo, which is no guarantee of how long that's going to last, but we'll take it while we can.
Okay, that's good to know. And Tia, how about you?
Well, we interact with retailers quite a bit, and I had some pretty great conversations with some major retailers who are keen to work with us on sourcing local. And we've never had that door opened so big and so wide ever before, right? So this is great because we're constantly, kind of trying to inform the trade on where there is demand. And now we'll be able to really do that matchmaking piece in regards to the quantity that a key retailer would need to actually bring in year-round products that traditionally they would have sourced from wherever else, particularly the US. I see that there is still a strong demand, of course, for Canadian products and the merchandising that's happening. In regards to one of the retailers I spoke to yesterday, I said, "Well, are you familiar with Foodland?" And then Foodland Ontario has an organic one, right? So I think that there will become more of a demand now for merchandising in store permanently. Like even if the tariffs go away, this is not changing. I think Canadian consumers have actually made a choice. It's more than the tariffs. They are threatened by the United States right now in regards to their sovereignty. And so you see a unity that you've never seen before. And I've seen a willingness from the retailers to work with us to remove those obstacles on sourcing year round from Canadian organic suppliers. So very positive, and I think it will be long term.
That's amazing. Yeah. And I have to wonder if this nationalism is going to sustain past a short term, or if it will be a long term thing. I do hope, like when you're saying these retailers, I mean, once they've changed that sourcing and that messaging goes out, I do think it will change, but you don't know. People sometimes are fickle, right? And it could just be here today and gone tomorrow. One of the reasons we actually did this conversation today, this panel, was because Lauren Stallard, she's one of our board members, and she's marketing director for Finnings Foods here in Ontario. And they source, they do a lot of their own produce, and they source local produce. But because we don't actually grow product, uh, certain products here year round, several products year round, right? It's an issue here that we have in Canada. In order to keep their retailers supplied, they do have to import products. So before the tariffs, they already had contracts negotiated. We're bringing in products from the US. And now that stuff is sitting on shelves. And I think there's a lot of Canadian businesses that have had a relationship with importing US products that are struggling now because of that. What is kind of an advantage, but it is a disadvantage because we can't really grow all the food here year round, and sourcing that can be a little bit difficult. So kind of around that idea, how do you think tariffs, and I know you guys just kind of alluded to this or talked about it directly in Tia's case, how is it changing consumer behavior? Like, are you hearing from the clients you're working with, the farmers you're working with, your friends, your family? Are you feeling that there is a change in consumer behavior? And I'll go ahead and I'll start with you, Rob.
Yeah, I guess for our business, we're kind of one step removed from the end consumer. A lot of what we do is in feed grains, so I think it's probably maybe a little too early to say from our perspective. I am worried a little bit, I guess, looking at the US consumer market. because the U.S. is a net importer of organic feed grains, and a net exporter on the conventional side. So if they're having to pay import tariffs for their organic feed, that could potentially raise the price of organic products relative to conventional. So put the organic product at a competitive disadvantage. And, as Mo alluded to earlier, if you see a lot of inflationary pressure from tariffs in general, is that going to have a negative impact on the US market at the consumer level? That's one of my big concerns.
Mo, how about you?
Yeah, I would say, so aside from the points I was making for the US market, for the Canadian market, like we're also one channel removed from consumers. We sell to retailers. So I haven't heard anything specific about consumer behavior, but what we anticipate, what we expect is that for us to sell into Canada, it's tariff-free, obviously, but Canadian consumers are likely going to feel the crunch with other costs of goods increasing. So there's going to be folks that live and die by organic food. And no matter if there's any price increases, folks will continue to eat and support organic food. But then there's a bunch of other consumers that are not necessarily like that, where they may be opportunistic organic eaters. And so if like with myself, back in the 10 years ago, I remember seeing organic apples being $4.99 a pound and conventional apples being 89 cents a pound. And then over time, the prices started to come closer and closer, and that made me and my wife want to eat more organic food. But there's still other organic foods like organic chicken that there's still a bit of a walkway between conventional and organic. But I think my fear is that those opportunistic organic eaters will likely feel the pain, and if it's much cheaper to eat conventional, that they may switch back to conventional if there's too much pricing disparity, or if they're feeling pain on their wallet because of other pressures that they're experiencing.
Yeah, it's a very good point. How about you, Laura?
Yeah, I'm sort of in the same boat. I don't really deal directly with consumers, so maybe Tia has more to say about this issue.
Yeah, that's why I left her to the last. Tia.
Yeah, we do a lot of consumer work and we do a lot of consumer studies. So, in the past, it's always been around 66% of Canadians are buying organic on a weekly basis. And obviously, we want to keep that up. We don't want to lose organic market share. What I think this is doing is it's making people read labels in a much bigger way, right? Like suddenly people are like, where does my food come from? What is the origin story of this? And that's a good news story for organic, because organic's got a great story to tell, right? And so I saw on many forums people looking at the Canada Organic logo and saying, is this made in Canada? Is that what this means, this logo, right? So I've been on the forums and I've been responding, no, it's a certification. But it generated great conversations by consumers to understand that this complies with the Canadian organic standards. It doesn't necessarily mean you need to do a double check. But obviously, every study that we've done in regards to sustainability claims, people are looking for local and organic together. So this is a real groundswell movement and time for consumers to be able to show their voting power, right? I think that retailers, they will do whatever the consumers want because they just want to bring back those loyal consumers back to their store. But back to the whole pricing issue, obviously we are concerned if there's going to be, inflationary pressures, if there's going to be job layoffs, if there's going to be, all sorts of things happening with currency fluctuation, which we're already seeing, that does impact people and their ability to shop. But most of the studies that we've done have shown that people continue to buy organic because it aligns with their values. or maybe there's a health reason also. There's all those things. So we're about to do another study just to kind of get our pulse on what's going on with the consumer side. I do encourage, if you have questions that you would like answered as a business, throw those questions either to OCO or in the chat or over to me, because we kind of want to know what are the most impactful questions that would help you orient your business in this current climate. So,
all right. Okay. Well, thank you for that. And you actually kind of you said the word vote with your voting power at the store. We are heading into an election, and there's other ways that we can vote, not just with our buying power, but literally vote. And so I'll go ahead and I'm going to start with you, Mo. I know you're probably, I don't know if this is really up your alley here or not, but at Riverside, MadeGood there, the MadeGood products, is there like lots of talk happening around the next federal election? And is there anything that you are doing as a company to promote the organic sector?
Yeah, you're right. I'm not, it's not down my alley, to be honest. Something that we are doing, if this sort of helps, is we are trying to engage, we've engaged our member of parliament to express our concern. We are working with a few other entities to try to continue to promote our product and organic food as a whole. But yeah, we're trying to take some measures. We're just trying to not kneel and just take the brunt of what's happening. So we're trying to do what we can as an organization to not only mitigate the risk to the organization, but to continue to promote good food and organic, healthy food out there to the consumers.
All right, that's great. And Tia, I'm going to leave you to the end again. So Laura, what's happening there? I know you're in Alberta. I think all of us are in Ontario here. Like what's happening around the election there in terms of organics and that voting power?
I'm in Manitoba.
Oh, Manitoba, sorry.
And the prairie really does not give a huge hoot about organic. So I can tell you that some of the mainstream stuff that I'm hearing from politicians about protecting Canadian farmers and protecting Canadian businesses is going to apply just as positively to organic businesses. And here in Manitoba, our minister came out yesterday with specific programs for farmers and for food processors. So I was happy to hear that. So all that kind of stuff is really going to build some internal resilience to anything horrible that may happen with international tariffs.
Yeah. All right. And Rob, I don't know if this affects the grain, if you guys actually have any messaging around this, or are you a little bit more just listening to what people are talking about?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, we've been so preoccupied, since the election call with trying to cope with the impending tariffs that it hasn't really hit the radar for us as a business. I know, I think speaking personally, I think there is opportunity, as Laura said, for more support for the agricultural sector in general. I think, the other thing that's been highlighted is interprovincial trade barriers. So I mean, I think that's another opportunity for us to look at as well. But apart from that, yeah, I think, it's just, the focus has been more on making sure that, we're kind of meeting the needs of our suppliers and customers day to day as much as we can.
Yeah, I actually had expected that when we talked about the advantages of tariffs, that the interprovincial trade barriers would be mentioned, and they weren't. So, and I thought that was kind of one of the benefits that we were seeing, but maybe everyone doesn't see it that way. So, Tia, I definitely going to throw this one to you. I know you guys have been working hard in Ottawa on that.
Yeah, so yeah, timing of having an election with the tariffs has been really fun. We have been working for months with what we'll call the Canadian Organic Alliance. So we have a partnership with two other national associations, the Canadian Organic Growers and Organic Federation of Canada, building up what are the election platform asks that we have sent to every single party. So we got those all in before the election was called, and we also did a pre-budget submission this year so that they are fully equipped with what the asks and needs are of the organic sector. And that is as we continue to work on that long-term organic strategy called the Organic Action Plan. What we're waiting on now is for each one of the parties to release their platforms. And we have seen the NDP come out with one, as well as the Bloc Québécois. The Bloc Québécois mentions organic in there. And that is our hope, is that we will have at any of the debates that are happening, that organic will get mentioned. In the last election, I nearly fell off my seat because organic was mentioned by every single party. And we are a nonpartisan issue, right? This is something that is good for absolutely everybody, whether you're a consumer or whether you're a producer or whether you're a manufacturer. So this is our goal, is to make organic common nomenclature amongst politicians, and that they are there thinking of the needs of our sector and listening to our policy recommendations. So if you want to go to our website, COG's website, Organic Federation of Canada's website, you can see what our election asks are. And we do have toolkits available for everybody from consumers to talk about with your local MPs as they're going around wanting to gain your votes. Really challenge them and ask how they're going to support, tell that story about why organic is important to you. And even if you don't even use the word organic, we care about sustainable agriculture and what they're going to be doing to make sure that there's a positive business climate for producers and businesses to survive in.
Yeah. All right. And so I'm going to actually open up the panel to some questions. If you want to put your questions in the chat, and I'm just going to share a couple of slides with you around the election here while you guys put those questions in the chat around sort of the politics here. Do you guys see vote with food policies in mind? Yeah. All right. So one of the things we do really want to encourage people is as we were talking about earlier, you can always vote when you shop, and with retailers, you know, supply versus demand is definitely a good way to work things, but also voting with food policies in mind. So supporting leaders who fight for the future of food. And as Tia said, it's nonpartisan, right? Like it's not necessarily that one is better than the other, but you do want to find someone that is that, you know, is advocating for these food policies. The second thing is we want to tell you, don't be afraid to connect with candidates. So there's a lot of opportunities. Our MPs are canvassing here. They show up at the door. I've sent multiple emails, and I get responses back right away. They're in full gear. So if this is something that's important to you, engage with them on it and find out what their feelings are. And sometimes it's not even the fact that they have feelings about it, but it's the fact that you have brought this up, and during a time when they're apt to make some promises, if you say something about food and organics, it's now on their radar, and they may make that as part of their platform. So just very important to get that information there. You can write letters, op-eds to your editor, you can send emails, use your social media, and collaborate with advocacy groups and COA and the COA, the Canadian Organic Coalition, their association. They're also have a lot of resources available as well on their sites. There is a opportunity through a website called eatthinkvote.ca. So this is not necessarily organic, but rather food based. And so you can actually ask for your representatives in the area to have a meeting to discuss food issues. So that's another opportunity to, you know, actually have that activity within the voting system. So there's also an advocacy guide, as I was mentioning. So the Canadian Organic Growers, CODA, and who's the third group there, Tia? Who am I?
Organic Federation of Canada.
Yeah, they're not on there, but you can see if you scan that code there, you can actually go right to their website and look at the advocacy guide to help you along with that. And then we just always want to say at OCO here, we're advocating for you. We bring people together. We talk to governments. We talk to anyone in the organic value chain, and really representing you in terms of what you need for organics, in terms of food, in terms of support. And so we are not for profit. So we always say, hey, you know what? We have memberships for all levels. So if you're an advocate, if you're just in here, what we call an eater, a consumer, there's a membership for you to support us, and you can find those on our website. So if you go to organiccouncil.ca, you can always get a membership there, and we do really appreciate it. It keeps us going. And you can always reach out to me. I'm the executive director here at OCO, and my email, erica@organiccouncil.ca, my phone number there, and then there's our website. So I just wanted to mention that. Now we can open up the floor for some questions. All right, let me take a look at the chat here. Oh, thank you. Yes, the link to the advocacy is in the thing. Thanks, Katie. All right. All right, so I'm going to kind of go to the top here. So I have Trudy Button is that saying, as a consumer, I'm looking for salad greens that are not from the US. Anyone have an answer for Trudy there?
I wish I took a picture because I was amazed last night when I went to Metro. There's so many. There's so many now on the shelf that are from Canada. And I bought them, but I don't remember the brand name. But Metro has them.
Okay, all right.
And if you can't find them, one thing, so I did my own personal analysis of what I would have to do to find Canadians. And for me, lettuce and carrots were at the top of my list. And I happened to find organic carrots from one of my own producers in the natural health food store. So the problem solved there. But lettuce, all I could find was like microgreens. So I've switched to microgreens.
All right, good to know. Trudy also says that she's heard the Finning story and will still buy it. And I think that's really important to note that even though we can move to the, buy Canada, buy local, we still need to support our local businesses that are already working on those partnerships. So for example, Riverside, who made partnerships long ago with other companies to source products from, their business is dependent on people buying their products in all different places. And so I don't think you guys probably say made in Canada on your products. Am I right, Mo? Your like percentage is high enough?
Yeah, well, we process the product in Canada, so it says made in Canada, but we source ingredients and packaging from all over the world. Like our brown rice syrup, for example, is a big item that goes into our chewy chocolate bars, and that's from South Asia. And we use oats that come from Saskatchewan, and we use sugars that come from the United States. But we process everything in Canada. So I think with these tariffs, I was just going to quickly comment on something that you just said, is that the news of the tariffs and our ability to research and implement change is very difficult. So it takes months, sometimes years. We have contracts, we have committed contracts, or we have to continue to source ingredients from a particular supplier in a particular part of the world. So that is a part of the challenge that we're dealing with, especially as a CPG manufacturer. So as much as we want to, make changes, sometimes we're a bit pot committed to the infrastructure that we built even before the news of tariffs becoming reality. So that's something to bear mention as well.
All right, yeah, it's a really, really good point. And yeah, we are an international market. We've been forever, and Canada businesses have truly depended on the world to keep going. And so it is important. All right. So Morris says, if the Trump administration's focus is to grow the American economy with this tariffs, I would think in my mind as a producer, it is a positive for us in the long run. As long as our currency remains low, we should be able to maintain a strong export market for our products. Does anybody have anything to say to that?
He's right.
But one thing is that I've heard that Costco US is actually kicking some Canadian products off the shelf. So it depends on if it's commodity or retail, possibly, right? So that's a scary thing, is that Costco's looking for non-Canadian options. But now that the announcement came out yesterday of a bunch of other countries being tariffed, maybe they'll think twice about that. I don't know.
I think Morris is talking about primary production. So that I think
Okay.
we can be more certain about that than for processed food products at this moment in time.
Right. Yeah.
Trudy has a comment for Tia about retailers having increased interest in stocking organic. As an organic consumer, my main places to grocery shop here in southwestern Ontario are where I can find organic, and that's my local farmer markets, Farm Boy, Goodness Meat, and Costco. My last resorts are Loblaws and Sobeys. If companies are taking advantage of the Buy Canadian Local opportunity right now, I hope the main go-tos are not the biggest retailers.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, we'll talk to anybody who wants to source organic, obviously, but it's easier for a smaller retailer to source local. And I think that's why you find that, or if that's their shtick, like Farm Boy, right? That's their whole premise, is to source local. Even like Whole Foods, they have like a local sourcer that they try and find local products. So it's a question of whether some of those large retailers are planning on, looking to source more local. I doubt it. They're too big. Right? So, but I'd say that some of the ones that we are talking to are about ones that can handle sort of mid-size range on quantity.
Okay, all right. A couple of other notes. So Tia in the chat has actually put that link to the tariffs. Michelle Meyer says, eat seasonal foods. We grew up eating cabbage and carrot salads in winter and spring. And yeah, it's true. Like, supporting our local farmers, it means eating local food when it's in season. And if you can do that, I've stored apples and rice for years to keep them from going rotten and just grabbing them throughout the season. So it is really nice when you can actually still eat local food in the middle of winter and spring. Marty says, for greens, Vision Greens in Welland or Goodleaf Farms, maybe in Guelph. All right, so we're going to wrap that up here. I just want to thank you all so much for taking the time today to talk about this very important issue. I think it's great to have so many different perspectives and even different provinces and that federal level and the manufacturing and the commodity trading buyers portion. And so I just really want to thank you all to bring that to everybody so that we can talk about these very important issues. And of course, now that we are in this next little bit where we are going to be voting, to keep that in mind as well. And so we'll probably have a couple more panels and talks as we get closer to the election around those pieces as well. I'm hoping we don't have to have a tariff talk for a while, but if Trump makes an announcement next week, it may happen and we might be back here again. But thank you so much. And again, feel free to visit that Canada Organic Member Resources website. And of course, we can always take your memberships if you can support us with an advocacy membership, or if you're a producer or a group, then if you can also, join one of those memberships, we appreciate it. And not just us, a lot of these are organizations. We basically run through memberships so that we can continue supporting you. So thank you so much, and good luck everyone with the new tariff world.
Thank
you,
you so
everyone.
much.
Thanks, Erica.
Take care.